All right, everyone. Excited to have Daniel Connolly of the UConn blog back on the podcast here. Daniel's my go-to for all things UConn women's basketball. We'll maybe even get a little hockey talk in here. So, Daniel, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, I'm glad I could make it.
Yeah, it's been way too long since your last appearance, so I'm
Yes.
glad we've got you back here. Let's start with this one. We'll start with women's basketball. Right now, probably a little bit more than halfway through the season, I'd say. I'm just curious at this point in time how this team has compared to the expectations you had in mind for them coming into the season.
Yeah, it's been kind of a weird year because I expected that there was going to be a process with this team. They were not going to look like the 2002 Huskies, the 2016 Huskies on day one. And not that I thought they ever had that high of potential, but I thought that this could end up being a really, really good team. And it's just taken a longer time than I think I would have expected because you start out the season and you have five returning players and then you have five new players. Then you add an AZ Fudd and then that takes a little time to settle. Then AZ Fudd goes out with a knee sprain, so then you have to figure that out. And then you get AZ Fudd and then that takes a little bit of time to figure out. Then you lose Paige for a couple games, so you have to figure it out without her. Now you get Paige back. Okay, well, you can start to settle things down. Well, now today Aubrey made her season debut, so she's back, and that's a whole nother element that you have to add in. So it's just, I think Gino had a pretty good word for it, that they're constantly in a state of flux. And
Mhm.
that's just kind of how it feels like it's been because you can see the talent. I mean, Paige, Sarah Strong, and AZ Fudd, when all three are healthy and playing, that's as good of a three combo as you're gonna get. But, everyone else is in a new role. Like the sophomores from last year aren't playing as much as they did as freshmen. And, Kaitlyn Chen's trying to navigate being at UConn. The other freshmen, besides Sarah, trying to figure out how they fit in. Jana, coming off that Achilles and still having to deal with her first college season. Ice having a much bigger role. So, yeah, there's lots of moving pieces, and they haven't. I mean, today they figured it out. Today was the best or they've performed this season. So, hopefully that puts them in the right direction. But yeah, it's been quite a process to this point.
Yeah, I was gonna say I got you on a day where they beat them by was it 60 on the dot? Is that what
It
it
was
was?
60. Yeah.
So yeah,
Largest margin of victory since the COVID season. So it's been a
it's
while.
yeah. So I got you on a good day to talk about this team here. Um, as you look at this team, I mean they pretty much had a pretty solid non-conference part to this point, with the exception of the losses at Notre Dame and then at home to USC. What do you think has been the biggest challenge for this team when the level of competition steps up a bit to go up against those other, say top 10 teams in the country?
Yeah, the thing that really plagued them in those two games was their three-point shooting, which is weird because, I mean, you look up and down the roster and they've got guys who can shoot. Paige, AZ, even Sarah Strong's a really good three-point shooter.
Mhm.
Ash Shade, like they've got the talent to do it. And this team also set the single game record for made three-pointers against Iowa State with 20. So they can very obviously hit the three. But Notre Dame, I believe it was 3 of 16. USC wasn't particularly good. So, yeah, Gino's been pretty confident in what their defense can do. And when they throw on a full court press, teams really struggle to handle it. USC really had
Yeah.
some trouble with it. And that's a talented team. So it's not just working against the Big East. And he's been worried about, can they make enough shots in order to keep up with other teams in these really good games. I think that's part of it. I'm also just I don't know that I've seen what this team's really made of yet, because at Notre Dame, I thought they got a little bit spooked by the atmosphere. I
Mhm.
don't think they were particularly mentally tough. Like they got it within one at the end of that third quarter, and then Hidalgo hits a three, and it totally unravels on
Yeah.
them in the fourth quarter. USC was a little bit different where they went down in a big hole, but it just didn't feel like they were totally ready for that moment. And the tough part about that is you look ahead that there's not many opportunities that they're going to have to prove that, that's in
Right.
the past and they've figured it out. It's maybe Tennessee if that game's close and at South Carolina. And then other than that, it's going to be the Elite Eight. We probably is the next time we'll see what they're made of.
Yeah, I was just going to say, how big do you think those remaining two non-conference games against Tennessee and South Carolina are? A, from a standpoint of showing that, maybe they could compete, at a bit of a higher level with these, higher level teams, especially South Carolina there. And then B, having all of the pieces together, hopefully at that time. And as you mentioned earlier in this, just kind of having that time to gel and maybe be a little bit less influx there.
Yeah, that South Carolina one is the one you have circled because that's going to be their last chance to pick up a pretty
Yeah.
marquee win for their NCAA tournament resume. And given what the top six-ish looks like in the country, I still think there's a path to getting a number one seed. It's just a matter of you have to win. You have to win out the rest of the regular season, and then involves winning at Tennessee, which I don't think it's going to be easy, but that
It's
feels
doable.
like one. Yeah, that feels like one that they should win like in that 10, maybe 15 point range. Like I'm,
Mhm.
I'm really not too worried about Tennessee, but yeah, South Carolina, they lost Ashlyn Watkins. They're not the team they were last year, but they're still really good. They're coming off just killing Texas and Oklahoma, two really good teams. So it's your last chance for a marquee win. It's your last chance to see how this team performs in a potentially hostile environment and against a really good team with a lot of hype around it. I think if you go into that one and just lay another egg, then I'm really going to have some concerns going into March. But like I think that's a winnable game for them. I don't think it's impossible. Like last year, you went into that game thinking that it was going to be a tall task to beat them at South Carolina.
Yeah.
This year, I think they can absolutely beat South Carolina, but we're going to learn a heck of a lot about who this team is for March based on what happens in that game, win or lose.
Yeah. I know you talked a little bit about the three-point shooting being kind of the kryptonite in those couple games against Notre Dame and USC. But as you looked kind of down the second half of the stretch and then into March, what are like the one or two things you're looking to see this team improve upon if they want to make the run that I think people had in mind heading into the season for what they could do?
Yeah, one thing is consistency. That was a big topic, especially early in the year where they would come out and have this unbelievable first quarter, and then the second quarter would be bad, and then they'd have this great third quarter or, a good first half, bad second half. There are many different variations of how they were inconsistent. And we saw it against USC. Terrible in the first half. You went down by as many as 18. Then the last 15 minutes, you outscored them by, I think it was 15. So, yeah, there's a team in there that can be down 18 and can lose at Notre Dame. And there's a team out there that can take on a national title contender and outscore them by 15 points and a half. It's been about finding more of a middle ground first, which I think they've largely done in this
Mhm.
second half. I think they've been a little more consistent. And then it's playing closer to that ceiling on a more consistent basis. Again, like you said, good day to talk about this because they did that against Seton Hall. It was a phenomenal first quarter that rolled into a great second quarter, that rolled into a dominant third quarter. And then it was like those 2016 era teams where you can kind of throw the bench out there in the fourth
Yeah.
quarter, doesn't matter. So I'd like to see more of that. And then I just would like to see someone else step up. Paige, Sarah, and AZ. I think you're getting to a point where you can kind of count on those three to contribute every single night.
Yeah.
They had, I believe it was 43 of 49 points maybe in the first half today. But then who's helping after that? Is it Ashlyn Shade, who obviously we saw what she could do last year
Yeah.
and talents there. Kaitlyn Chen was a big scorer at Princeton, hasn't really done it here at UConn yet. Could that be Aubrey Griffin now that she's back? Or even Morgan Shelley, who's having a really nice freshman year? They've got a lot of options, but I'd really like to see a fourth option emerge. Just it gives them more depth. And if
Definitely.
you're getting 15 a game from those first three that I mentioned, and then 10 more from someone else, and then everyone else is just chipping in a little bit, suddenly you've got a really deep roster, and that's going to be really tough to defend.
For sure. If I had to make you pick someone to be that fourth contributor there that's stepping up and doing it consistently, who would you take?
It's a little tough because Aubrey just came back, but the way
Yeah.
she was playing last year before she went down with that torn ACL is as good as she's played in a UConn uniform and legitimately looked like a piece that could, maybe if everything broke right, help UConn to a national championship last year.
Mhm.
So if that's the Aubrey that they're going to get by the time late February, March rolls around, once she's got her feet back under her, then I'm pretty confident it's going to be her. Even if it's not, I still like the way Ashlyn Shades played most of the season. And, it hasn't been the 15 to 20 points that you got last year, but she's started to settle into this area of pretty consistently between 8 and 12. And I think, that could be successful too.
I feel like every year there's always a fun UConn Twitter debate a little bit. And this year, I think a lot of it's revolved around how much time KK Arnold's gotten out there. What do you think her role is on this team as you look forward?
She's definitely turned a corner in the new year because Gino said she had a tough camp. She was fine early in the season, but it wasn't that impact type player that we saw from her last year. And she went home, played at Marquette. She's a Wisconsin native on New
Yep.
Year's Day. And since then, she has just strapped herself to a rocket ship and has been unbelievable. Defensively, she just puts other teams in hell. Then offensively, when she to the rim, she's an okay 3-point shooter. She's not going to shoot the lights out, but if you're getting around 33% from her, you're
You'll take
feeling
it.
pretty good. Yeah. So I think a lot of it, like the discussion, I know what you're talking about. A lot of it is both she should be starting over Kaitlyn Chen and she should be getting more minutes over Kaitlyn Chen. I do think, and I kind of buy this argument that Gino really likes the way that she can come off the bench and impact a
Be a
game. So
spark,
I
yeah.
get that. Yeah. I do think that he made a little bit of a mistake against UNC or USC in that he did not take he did not put KK in that entire fourth quarter and he didn't take Caitlin out that entire fourth quarter. And Caitlin had a pretty good game that day. But the way that she performed, and she was a big reason they made that comeback, I think she should have gotten more minutes. It's it's really the type of thing where I don't know how much the total minutes count, but when you get into that last 5 minutes of a close
Right.
game,
Who's
who are you
out there?
putting out there? Yeah, and right now I think I would rather go with KK, just given that impact she can have, and it could change game to game, but from what we've seen this season, I think KK has the higher upside at the moment. Maybe Kaitlyn Chen really emerges and can start scoring and becomes that fourth scorer for you,
Yeah.
and you got to have her out there. But they feel like they're on pretty equal footing as a point guard. So KK brings that energy, that defense, that downhill playing style. I'd rather go with her at the moment.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting conversation to have around those two. And as you mentioned, I've always been one. It doesn't necessarily matter who's starting. It's who's out there at the end of the game when you're trying to close it out. Looking to add some local flavor to your lineup? Martin Rosel's is the MVP of your game day spread and a slam dunk for any occasion. Proudly made in hard-hit New Britain, their famous kielbasa and hot dogs have been a fan favorite for over 96 years. You can find their products in grocery stores across the state or have them delivered directly to your home court, coast to coast, via martinrosel.com. Take your taste buds to the championship and go support a UConn fan-owned business. I want to just dive into Sarah Strong a little bit because obviously I think everyone had high expectations for her coming into this year. I think she's probably exceeded, I think, or at least met or exceeded what everyone had thought coming into the season. What are your just kind of initial thoughts on what she's brought to this team this year?
Yeah, Big East Media Day. Gino says that she's the type of player that's going to change the trajectory of the program, which is a pretty unbelievable thing to say as a freshman. And he
Yeah.
pretty much spent the entire preseason being as high on her as possible. And somehow that still kind of undersold how good she is.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say she's having one of the best freshman seasons we've ever seen at UConn. I think if you project out and just kind of look at what can she be in her career, I don't think it's really a hot take at this point to say she's going to be one of the best players that's ever come through this program in terms
Yeah.
of talent. I mean, she's that good. She's got the size at 6'2", so she's not a true big, but then she can step out, dribble the ball, shoot threes with ease, knock down threes with ease. I mean, her defense is unbelievable. Her hands are so quick. She catches everything. She passes really well. I mean, every single game it feels like, oh, yep, Sarah had 17 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, and 4 steals, and that's just a run-of-the-mill game for her. So she's been unbelievable. And in a weird way, I almost feel like she can get even better because, as Gino has said, he wants her to play like she's an All-American and
Yeah.
act like it. And she still kind of acts like a freshman, yet still ends up with those unbelievable numbers. So yeah, as good as Gino tried to hype her, it wasn't enough. She's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. I don't have enough words to describe it.
No, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly there. Want to talk about Paige a little bit because I think everyone was curious to see what her role was going to be this year in terms of, whether she was going to be more of a takeover player. What have been your thoughts on how you've seen her game evolve, especially this year into what she's trying to do out there?
So I'm going to use a baseball reference, and you're a
Uh,
baseball guy, so I think
yeah,
you'll
yeah,
get it. You know the term prospect fatigue,
yeah,
where a prospect's been in a system so long that instead of him being the shiny new object that everyone's excited about in the future of the franchise, he's a high school kid, so he's been in the system for 6, 7, 8, that might be a little, but like 4 or 5 years.
yeah.
Okay, now everyone knows his flaws and everyone's focusing on those. And oh, well, he can't hit the curveball. He's not good against lefties. Like, how is this guy supposed to be anything? Paige is in her 5th year. She's been unbelievable since day one. And I think she's suffering from prospect fatigue where she's having the best season of her career. I don't think there's much of an argument, but because it's not, 35 points, hitting half court shots all the time, having a triple double every single night, somehow it doesn't feel like she's leaps and bounds better because she started on a high
High,
level.
such a high pedestal. Yeah,
Like there's only so high you can get, especially going up against college players. So
yeah,
like I don't think it's been perfect. I think she'd be the first to admit that she probably wish she played a little bit better against Notre Dame and USC, but again, you look at her numbers in those games and she had 20 points in both. It's just a matter of there were a few shots in there that
yeah.
could have swung the game one direction or the other that she didn't hit. That I feel like early in her career she was really good at hitting those shots that impacted the game, but she's as efficient as she's ever been in her career. Like, yeah, the blocks are down because she's not playing power forward, but she's still assisting or rebounding or getting steals. And I think the biggest thing is she just seems like maybe before the injury more so than now, but that she just had the weight of the world on her shoulders. And
Definitely,
she knows that she does not have a national championship and she's going to be viewed differently if she's this UConn superstar that doesn't come away with one. And whether or not she admits it, I think she is acutely aware of every single thing that people say about her. And that can weigh on you. So,
definitely.
ability wise, the way she's playing, like, yeah, I'd like to see her maybe have one of those games where she just takes over and can't be stopped the way that we saw against, like, the one I'm always going to point to is South Carolina, her freshman year, where
Yeah,
she scored every point for UConn in overtime in the last 10 points or something in the game, or NC State in the Elite Eight, where she pretty much willed them to the Final Four.
definitely. Yep.
I'd like to see one of those games just to see it, or to have her, have a game where even if the numbers aren't great, she's just hitting big shots and she is definitively the reason that they took this game. But, she's Paige. She's really good. She's going to be the reason that I'm like confident that I will be in Tampa in April. I mean, this is the best team. They're the best surrounding cast, I would say, that she's played with.
Definitely.
Just you have Sarah, and Sarah is better than any other player that she's played with. No disrespect to Aaliyah Edwards, who is also an All-American. Then you add an Azzi Fudd if she can stay healthy and play at this level. Then everybody else. I mean, she's got everything around her. I just kind of think someone needs to grab her by the shoulders and say, Paige, relax. It's okay. You don't have to be Superman every single time you
Yeah.
step on the court. And if she can kind of figure that out by March, they're going to be in really good shape.
I'll give you this one to kind of wrap the women's basketball talk here a little bit. If I asked you to fill in the blank, UConn can win it all if. What's the if there?
If Jana El Alfie can get to a point where she is a firmly good post player. They do not need her to be an All-American, but they just need her to contribute down there. I don't know totally what that looks like, but you can't have the missed layups, you
Yeah,
can't have the bad fouls, you can't shut down because you make a bad play and it just derails the rest of your game because Gino has said it really ad nauseum this season that his best teams had a great guard, and that's Paige. They had a great post player, which like Sarah, but not a traditional post player, and they had a great wing. That's Azzi, and that can take them a long way. And then they have two really good point guards in Kaitlyn and KK that they can rely on. They've got depth. The one area that I really worry about is down low because Sarah can only do so much. She's six
Right.
two. She's not this true back to the basket post player. Ice Brady, it feels like she's going in reverse right now. Maybe they can pull her out of that because she's had some nice moments this year. But I think Jana's the one. There's been a steady progression since they put her in the starting lineup. She's getting better, but right now she's taking steps forward instead of leaps ahead.
Hmm.
And if they can have everything else in order and then Jana really emerges as this impactful player down low, then you're talking about a team that, all right, if things go well and you might have to force the other team into some mistakes in order to win it all, then I think you can start to move into the territory of, well, how are other teams going to stop them? That's when I think this really becomes a much bigger threat to win a national championship.
I like that. So good fill in the blank there. Nicely done. Hockey season obviously in full swing here, and I know this is the time of year where if you start thinking NCAA tournament, everyone's looking at the pairwise, all that
Mhm.
fun stuff. So just give us a little primer on where things stand for this UConn hockey team right now.
Man, it's been I mean, I think I've said this 5 times, but like it's been unbelievable because yeah, like I almost feel like to explain this season, you have to go back a few seasons where they had this big senior class, their second like this that senior class replaced the first group of freshmen
Mhm.
that came in when they joined Hockey East. They got them to the Hockey East final, one goal away from reaching the first NCAA tournament in program history. Then you lose that group, you bring in a new freshman class that you're hoping can start this new cycle, and they have a way better season than expected. Get off to a 9-1-1 start, just miss out on the NCAA tournament, but you're feeling really good about the future. And then it all falls apart on you last season where you just can't score. Everyone's miserable. The locker room's not in good shape. You finish with well below expectations. You lose a first rounder in Matthew Wood, one of two first rounders the program's had to the transfer portal, two other draft picks. One of your best players in the Hockey East era, Chase Bradley, signs professionally. And you're staring what looks like is going to be a pretty sizable rebuild in the face. And there were some whispers throughout the offseason from people on the team saying, hey, look out. We might not be as bad as everyone thinks, but you take that a little bit with a grain of salt, but even I think the most optimistic people around this team, like I think if you gave the coaching staff truth serum and asked them, I think even they would say that this is way
Really?
above their possible expectations because they're currently on a 4 game unbeaten streak or 5 game unbeaten streak now. They are firmly in the NCAA tournament field. I believe last I checked, this was last night, so it could have changed, but they were ninth in the pairwise, which is a 3 seed. You move up one spot and you're a 2 seed. This is a program that's never made the NCAA tournament. In terms of pairwise, they've not really come that close. 2 years ago, you win maybe 2 or 3 more games against the right opponents and you can get in.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it, though. So yeah, they have a legitimate shot at making the NCAA tournament. You can kind of make an argument that they're probably on that track, barring a total and utter collapse that me we've never seen before. I
Mhm.
mean, it would require a lot at this point for them not to make it. So yeah, there's still a lot of season left, but every game they're going to play, with the exception of a couple, is against teams that are very highly ranked in the pairwise. And I think what was most eye-opening is they just went up to Alfond Arena at Maine. If that's not the toughest place to play in the country, I don't know what is. Not many teams go up there and win in general.
Yeah.
It's a long bus ride. The crowd is just rabid. It's a 12th man for football, but like
Yeah.
a seventh guy, I guess, on the ice, whatever that comparison would
Yeah.
be. Maine can just feed off that. And so many games go where Maine struggles early on and the crowd just kind of wills them in the third period and they win. And UConn goes up there and not only beats them on Friday night pretty comfortably, they score a late goal and force a tie. So they go up to Alfond Arena and don't even lose on a weekend. That is remarkably impressive for a Maine team that started the weekend on the one line.
Yes.
So that was really eye-opening. They've been really, really good, really consistent, fun to watch, and yeah, so far past expectations, you can't even see them anymore.
Yeah, if I know sometimes people once things start picking up a little bit, start tuning in for the first time of the year, or really start tuning in and checking it out. Give us the names, a couple guys that if you're just tuning into UConn men's hockey, you want to keep your eye out for.
Yeah, I had been saying the last few weeks, like, this team is so balanced that if you asked who's their best player, you would probably get a bunch of
Bunch of
different
different.
answers. I'm not sure if that totally applies after this past weekend. Joey Muldowney, a sophomore forward, 4 goals in the win over Maine, tied for the most goals in a single game in the Hockey East era, leads the team in goals. I believe he might lead them in points now after the weekend. He's had a really nice leap this past year, so he's been phenomenal. Hudson Shandor, he just became the Hockey East era points leader. I believe he has a point in 11 of his last 12. Started the weekend tied as the points leader. He's been really good. Fifth year guy who just great kid, embodiment of the program. And then Ryan Tattle has been a really nice story. As a freshman, he missed pretty much like half the season because his mom got sick with cancer and then ultimately died from it. So he was away from the team for a long chunk to be with her and everything that followed with that. The next year, wasn't really doing a whole lot in the first half and then scores his first goal, which pretty unbelievably happens to be on the 1 year anniversary of his
Oh
mom's
wow.
death. And it's just been an upward trajectory since then. He is up in the team leaderboard in both goals and points. He's just always making an impact out there. Had the opening goal on Saturday night up at Maine, but a hard-nosed player can like use all the hockey cliches, hard-nosed, 200-foot player, grinder, guy you love to have on the bench. But yeah, he's been just another really nice surprise for this team. And there's a bunch of those guys. Like,
Yeah.
there's no superstars. They have 3 draft picks. That's the fewest that they've had in years. And yet, those grinder types like Ryan Tattle or like Jake Percival's having a really good
Yep.
year. Tristan Frazier, Tabor Heaslip. These are all guys that are contributing for them and helping. And yeah, it's a lunch pail type team, and they're making it work.
Yeah, well, it's going to be fun to watch the rest of these winter sports as they
Mhm.
head towards postseason play and see what we can get out of them. So everyone, make sure you're following Daniel's coverage because he knocks it out of the park on all this stuff. So I'm glad we finally got you back on the podcast. We won't make you wait as long next time. We'll get you on sooner because I think we might have some fun postseason stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I mean both teams. I've only been to the Garden once to cover hockey in the
Yeah.
hockey semifinals and finals. So, you know, whether or not that happens again, it seems like it's trending at least that both teams that I cover are going to be in the NCAA tournament for the first time.
Yeah. It keeps you on your toes, keeps you busy.
Keeps me busy, that's for sure.
There you go. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And thanks again for hopping on.
Yeah, glad to be here.